Hello and welcome to this free First Magic Mondays call with me. I'm Stephanie Benedetto and my co-conspirator, co-creator, partner in crime, Tom Maddox. Welcome. Hello, Lee. Nice to see you. And as I was contemplating a theme for this conversation, for this month, what came to me was something that I call wild creation. And this is a phrase I started using about 4 or 5 years ago. And something about it just lit me up. I don't even remember where it came from, or, it doesn't have a fun origin story that I can recall. But I liked the way it made me feel. And what originally sparked it was this idea that I wanted to do a wild creation experiment. And to me, this meant creation from nothing. Creation without an agenda. Creation that comes from, what arises naturally inside of me, inside of us. And I started experimenting first I did some online groups and it was going to be a thing. I actually was working with a different kind of coach at the time. And he was like, okay, so you have to identify your process and you have to repeat it and do it with more people. And then you can systemize it. And I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. That's not what I'm talking about here. But what I realized was that I've been in that experiment ever since. And it's really not just a business experiment, it's a life experiment. So what happens when I live from the present moment? When I live from what's happening instead of what I think should be happening or what I'm trying to make happen. And okay, I am going to share this, Tom. Just this morning, I had this thought and realization come to me, and it's really a question. Because I've had this journey around home and this feeling of home inside of me. And it's really beautiful there. And I think everyone knows home, that feeling of home, even if they think it comes from something outside of themselves. Everyone knows that feeling. Everyone's been there, if only for a short while. And I knew this home, and I finally knew this home was in me. And how beautiful is that, right? But what I realized this morning is that I thought I had to leave it. Like I thought that I had to leave that beautiful feeling and this space of home to figure stuff out or to get certain things done. Like this morning, going to get a rental car and, the mechanics and logistics of all of that stuff. And like, oh, I got to leave home because I got to think about it. I got to go into my thinking. And this morning I was like, oh my God, what if I really don't ever have to leave? What if I don't ever have to leave this nice feeling of the present moment? And that doesn't mean that I shouldn't. And that doesn't mean that I won't. I'm pretty damn sure that I will. But I'm like, oh my God, I don't have to leave. I just think I do. And this is very fresh for me. So I have no idea what exactly that means, other than like I keep seeing myself get caught up and I'm going, Steph, you don't have to leave. You can come right back. You can stay here where you always are. There's this gorgeous metaphor that Michael Neal shared this weekend and had us explore and experiment with. And it's like, how you have bars on your phone, right? Like, and he made up a fifth bar. Like sometimes you've got no signal on your phone, which means you feel like you're not plugged in to wisdom. You're not present. You're not connected. Like there's nothing happening, right? But then you got 1 bar, or you've got 2 bars, or you've got 3 bars, you've got 4, or you've got 5 bars, full signal, full bandwidth, all the data you could possibly want, right? And we played with that metaphor this weekend. Like, what does it feel like? And the truth is that there's always 5 bars available. There's just interference sometimes. We're always fully plugged in. We're always fully connected. We're always alive with wild creation. But sometimes we don't feel it because of the interference of our thinking that can make us feel like we're down at a 1 or a 2 or a 3. And because I don't have to go into the interference, I can kind of, like, that's what I'm sitting with. Like, oh my God, I don't have to go into it. I can and I will, but I don't have to. And there's something really different about that for me. So that's my opening.
Wow.
Tom, I'm going to hand that over to you.
Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you for that. Sometimes the word creation is kind of it gets kind of funny for me because it seems like there are these places and these times when I'm creating, but these other times I'm not really creating. And that's like not true at all. Like there's something, like there's always creation going on every moment. And part of that is that it's not necessarily tied to me doing something. Like you could just sit and look out your window and just look at what's happening. I mean, isn't that's creation in the moment? It's just kind of happening, and things are moving or not moving or doing whatever they do. So it's kind of nice to take, because sometimes like creation or creativity can seem like a big deal, or can seem like something that people will sometimes say, well, I'm not that creative, or I'm not creative, or I have creative blocks, or things like that. And those are all just things that are being created, aren't they? Those are ideas that are being created in the moment. So there's always creation. But it is kind of this funny thing where sometimes it feels like, oh, it's just happening, you're just watching it happening, and you call that creation. Or maybe it doesn't even occur to you to call it anything. It's more like when we're in this conversation, we say, oh, that's creation. Or other times things are happening. And I don't know if you've ever had this experience where it's more like things are happening and it's just kind of like you're jumping in on it. Like you're jumping onto a horse or jumping into a stream. And then other times it does really feel like it's okay. I'm sitting down, I'm going to start painting, or I'm going to start creating this document, or I'm going to start thinking about my itinerary for my next 10 days or whatever, which is creation too. And they feel like they're different. But to me, I think the thing that's nice to maybe reflect on here is what does all that have in common? And that force, that creative force, that I guess what I'm saying is it's nice to sometimes feel that it's not that big a deal, or that it's not that hard, or it's not like because sometimes, I mean, creativity in a way I think is supposed to be fun, maybe, but it doesn't always feel like fun. It can feel like drudgery sometimes. And that's part of the creation too, maybe. So I think it's good just to kind of be wide open. And then the word emergent, in a way, right, Steph? You used the word emergent in there, wild and emergent. And emergent to me doesn't feel that much like something that I'm doing. It's more like something that's happening. Uh, I'm visiting. I'm co-creating with, sort of. So, so it's just a great topic. And so I think it's nice as we reflect on this to feel like lighter about it, maybe, if there is something here, freer, seeing it more and more like where it's already happening. So I think it'd be really wonderful to open it up and see, like, what is this? How is this resonating for people? And how do you all feel? Like, what is this for you?
Yeah. And if you wouldn't mind raising your hand, it'll make it a little easier, digital hand, for me to see you. If you go down to the reactions button. I'm wondering if there are any questions that come up around creation or this idea of being wild creation. Does it sound attractive? Does it sound scary? I'm curious about that, you know. Hi, Michaela. Love to speak to you today.
Hey, yeah, nice to speak. There's a lot that came up around this in lots of different ways, but I'm writing an about me. And it's so interesting how when you talk, when, you know, Tom, you were talking about how it can feel hard sometimes, and how it can feel fun and it can feel easy. And, you know, I think the only time that it feels hard is when I'm trying to make it sound a certain way because of someone or something else. And this is so fresh that it's kind of new for me too, especially when it's around me, and especially when I'm putting up my hand and saying, I can help you with this. And really what I mean to say is, hey, I help myself and I've helped others, and maybe together we can help each other more. Like, I don't know. So what finally became fun, and to me, it's gritty. It feels when it's like gravel road. I grew up on a farm, and when the road is paved, it's like, it's almost false. It's almost like not true. It's covering stuff up. And so when I know that I'm really connecting to what wants to be, what's really at the core, it feels like I'm on gravel. Like I can feel everything, and it's way richer. And I don't know, there's just something so basic about it, yet it was not. It was like everything is encased in that, and everything is sort of revealed. So it's not polished, it's just very real. It feels like wild and feels like real shit. Like real stuff. So anyway, that's what kind of comes to mind. One little add-on that was kind of a scary bit that came up when I was listening to you both talking is, I'll quickly share this little tiny story about my email. And I have two email accounts, a private and a business one, and they're sort of combined together. So when I look on my phone, you know, I can see how many there are. And I looked at it a day last week, and there was, okay, hold your horses, 11,111 emails. And it's like, okay, but I have to share it because of all these ones. Like, that was pretty cool, I thought. And I shared it, and I said, yeah, it's a big number, but just look at the number. And so that was cool. And then what I realized, this was the night where my good friend, who has a couple of rental properties, and she's been having a lot of trouble. She ended up having to evict someone. And when she finally got in that day to have a look, it was a hoarding situation. And so it was quite like, wow. And when she showed me pictures and I said, what I see here is a lot of fear and a lot of pain. And then, oh, and I might cry. And then I thought, wow, I'm a hoarder of information. I'm a hoarder of how to do it right. Looking to the experts. Give me that download, give me this. And I thought I had come a long way, and I have, and I am. I'm sort of looking to, before I download something, is like, is this pertinent right now? And is it actually going to be helpful with where I am in life right now? And right now I'm kind of overwhelmed. Like, I've unsubscribed to so many, but it seems like there's so many that I just can't keep on top. And someone said that there's an app for that. I'll actually go and grab things. So I haven't done it yet. But that was the fear bit that came out when I'm not just like throwing everything off my desk and just like, what wants to come out about me in this case. So anyway, that's what came up.
Well, I'm wondering, Michaela, if you can feel it, if you can notice it, that wild creation, that wildness of life that's alive inside of you, that is showing you just what you need to see, just when you're ready to see it, in whatever happens to be right in front of you. I mean, everything about what you're saying is so alive to me. Like, that's what I'm noticing, is that you're feeling the feels, the ride of life, all of it, the whole spectrum. And it's beautiful. And that's what's occurring to me too, is that it doesn't mean that I don't feel it, all the whole experience, when I'm at home, when I know I can stay here. It just isn't as serious. It isn't as demanding of my attention. I almost feel like there's a buffer around things a little bit, like they're padded. The sharp edges aren't quite so sharp, at least right now. Yeah, that's beautiful, Michaela. And if you listen to what you said on the recording about the gravel road, and it feels real, and I mean, there's something in that you maybe already have written about it that really speaks to how you want to be with people. Like, and you said it so clean. I've helped myself, and I've helped some other people, and maybe together we can, I mean, it's so clean and so real. There's no fluff, there's no pumping yourself up, but it's very like, hey, I found something that helps. Love it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love too what you're sharing, because especially the gravelly bit, because there can be this misconception that creativity, when it's happening or we're in the flow, that it's all smooth and nice and friendly. But it can be anything. It can be gravelly, it can be, like the example for me is sometimes, like, so when I paint and I'm at home, I'm painting with acrylics, and it mostly is that, like, it's very it is actually very smooth, very nice, etc., almost all the time. Now when I go out, when I travel, like locally, and I go out and I go to a coffee shop and I bring out, I don't bring my acrylic paints, because there's just, there's too much of a risk of getting paint on things. So I bring my watercolor crayons, and it's a different process. And honestly, when I'm with the watercolor crayons, it doesn't move. Like, it can be kind of like, this is kind of, I don't know, it's not the same. But the thing that is the same is it's happening. And when you're just in tune with it, okay, this is how it's happening. This is how it's going. And actually, I feel like at some point there's going to be some kind of almost like some kind of breakthrough in the watercolor that's going to transform it. But for now, it feels kind of clunky. It feels kind of, but I still like it. And it's still in the moment. It's the same thing. You're just moving, you're observing, and it just is the way it is. And so that's beautiful. I love that reminder, the rawness, the realness. That's what creativity is too, as much as anything else. So let's see. I think we have Lee next. Hi, Lee.
Hi. I always love being in this space and grappling with my words. So there'll be some grappling. But I wanted to speak to Michaela real quick. When you were talking, I just heard simple but not simplistic, like that sort of essential bit when you hit that, when you were describing when you were in that space. And that was just, I just wanted to share that's what kind of popped into my head. It's not reductionist. It's simply finding the essential essence of it. But as far as wild creation goes, what came up for me when I was listening to all this is that I have learned a lot about that through how I create my art, and I'm really having trouble taking it out into the rest of my life. So I've become pretty fearless and just throwing paint, not worrying about where I'm going to go next and letting it unfold. If you guys are familiar with Christy Halverson, I cottywomple in my art all the time. But man, it's like the minute I try to step out of my studio or my creating space with that wild creation, just whoosh, it dries right up. So I guess I just wanted to share that's an experience that I'm having right now where I can't seem to transfer that experience elsewhere yet. And so I look forward to figuring it out, but I haven't. So.
Yeah. Well, I had, Lee, I had a very similar experience before I started painting, and having very similar experiences to what you're talking about before I came across the principles. But when I came across the principles, I realized it was the same thing that was going on in my painting. But just for some reason in that environment, to me, the thing was the sort of negative thoughts, you might say, that would come in. You could just see that they had no bearing when I was painting. Yet in the rest of my life, I was times when I was like horribly depressed. I'm like, what's going on here? And somehow, I don't even know how it happened. Somehow being in the community and listening to people, it translated on its own. It did at some point make that leap. I didn't do anything to make it happen. And I think what you might find is, like when you go out in the world, like you said, you have this experience that it dries up. Now, what you might find, like going forward, is you might start noticing where it's not dry. Mm-hmm. You just might be out shopping and you'll notice something and you go, oh, there it is. Like it could just be for a brief moment that it's already, and I think that's what I found is it was already happening. I just didn't see it. And somehow being and that's why I think, being groups like this, it's not just fun, but like when we talk to each other and we hear things, then sometimes we start seeing them where they're already happening. They already have been happening, and then they just happen. And somehow just recognizing it can really like allow it to take off. And yeah, you have these feelings where it feels dry, but other times you have these feelings where it's really alive. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, what is that about? What is going on with that? So yeah, I love what you were saying about the
I appreciate that share, Tom. I actually wrote it down in my notes as the yellow Volkswagen principle, right? But start looking for it instead of walking around with wielding this big thought that's going to keep me from ever experiencing anything that I don't know where it is out beyond my studio. Looking for the yellow Volkswagen. Where is it actually happening? So I thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and another way of saying that, like it's always, always try to respect what people say and where they're at. Mm-hmm. And at the same point, you can say, well, maybe that idea that it's dry, maybe that's a thought, and just something to explore.
There's a story that came to mind. I'm going to borrow it. It's not my story, but I'm going to tell it anyway. That's actually my sweetie's story. He likes to go out, stand up paddleboarding on the ocean. And for him, this is a way for him to connect, to plug in to that flow of wild creation. And it works really well. And he said one day he was having the worst day ever. And he went out on a stand-up paddleboard and said the great thing about being out on the ocean there is that you can have 1,000 people on the beach and you can scream your head off and nobody hears you. And he's like, and I was just yelling. And all of a sudden you had this feeling of, I'm not alone. And up popped the head of this little seal looking at him. And he looked at the seal and he went, hey, hi, how are you? And it was like their eyes met and they looked at each other, and then the seal poof, under the water and was gone. And it was like, he said, all that crap going on in his head was vanished. Like the seal took it. Like it was like magic. And the thing is he was telling this story. And as I reflect on it, the seal didn't take anything. What happened? He stopped paying attention to this. He saw something much more interesting, and he put his attention where he wanted it to go. This magical moment with the seal, and it was like it evaporated. Because it did. The minute you stop thinking it, the minute you stop. And that's really different from thinking there's something we have to do to get rid of something, or even something we have to drop. There was no intention in that. It was like just not putting attention on the interference brought the awareness to what was already there, the magic, the creation, the flow. I think that's really cool. So, Danikita, I would love to say hello. I'm saying hello.
Hi. Hi, everyone. Yeah, thank you for sharing. I'd love to add something about the home thing, being home and choosing where I want to be. My creativity right now is not big. I can hardly write a voice letter or newsletter to my people, or create any music. It's a downtime. And I look at it as fire. Creativity for me is fire. It can be sparky fire, it can be inspiration coming in kind of fire, and it can be kind of that fire from really, really brewing, even sensual energy kind of fire that creates creativity. We know that how children are created, right? So for me right now, it is more, and I have just picked this from over there. It feels like I have a big bowl with amber in it. Ember, like coal, burning coal. And once in a while, I manage to throw a little bit of a piece of wood on it so it doesn't completely, opposite of ignite, go out, So like I feed that kind of, and it feels to me like my lowest chakra. I have all these pictures like my lowest chakra or my pelvis, and this is where I kind of sit at home in this kind of warmth. It feels warm. It doesn't feel exciting. It doesn't feel like, oh, I'm going to create this and that. I'm doing stuff, taking care of past unresolved issues. So it's no fun. But I do try to keep a little bit that, you know what I mean? When you put a little bit of a wood on it, then the flames go, and then it goes out again. So much to creativity can be also just holding that ember, that warmth, that bowl. How sometimes they have bowls, and I even have one in the garden where I can put fire, like a fire pit bowl. Yeah, that's my sharing.
Nice.
Small kind of creation. Somebody said before, tiny bits of creation, just to keep the ember burning. I think that would be one sentence.
Yeah. It seems, you know, we get these, or I'll speak for myself, and maybe you'll find yourself here too. These very lofty ideas about what it means to be creating or inspired, and it's like wild and it's passionate and it's energized, and there's soft creation, there's natural, it's effortless, it's happening constantly. It's more like a gentle river a lot of times, or just floating, or as Dana Gita says, of embers, glowing embers. It's alive, and at any moment maybe we'll spark something bigger, but that's not the point. The point is, and if there even a point, it's just there. It's always there. It's available, and the experience shifts and changes.
Yeah, it could take so many forms, right?
Mm-hmm.
The fire is a great metaphor because it takes so many forms. But in those examples, it's always there. And if we're not judging the different forms, then we have a different experience of it. We're just seeing it as it is. So, yeah. Well, hello, Ian. How are you doing?
Hi, guys. I had a nightmare with the Zoom technology, which normally plays nicely, but it kept telling me there was some kind of pop-up it didn't like on my laptop, and on my iPad it was fine, and then my laptop was working again. So I don't know. So I missed, sadly, much of what you said at the start, Stephanie, but I can catch it up. I think it's fascinating. Here we are. We've got back to fire, and we were talking about watercolors. And I love to paint, as you know, Tom. And the thing I've found with watercolors and water is don't fight the water. Give it primacy in the work and let it do its thing and let it flow. The color's like a bonus. But acrylics demand to be slapped on and textured and worked with. Water just wants to just flow. But yeah, it's lovely that we're talking about creativity today. At some point last year, I kind of put my hat in the ring and was quite happy to describe myself as a card carrying creative. Not like it's something to keep quiet or to be ashamed of or embarrassed about in some way, but that hell, that's just who and what I am. And the deeper and deeper I go with that, it takes on so many different modalities and genres and expressions. But the more and more it just sits, and people ask me what I'm doing these days. Yeah, I say I like to create things. I write and I paint and do other things as well sometimes. And this whole thing about being wild, I'm in love with that energy at the moment. Absolutely in love with it. Is it scary at times? Hell yeah. But I'm kind of like almost wanting more of it as a result of that. And somehow it is for me aligned to following my own heart's desire, trying to find what my unique expression in life is. Not people pleasing and following old habits and doing what other people sort of think I should do. Oh, Ian isn't the sort of person who does this or doesn't do that. It's like Ian's going to follow my intuition. It serves me pretty well. And came across the is it Terence McKenna anyway, quote about the fear sometimes of doing new things and taking chances. We leap into the abyss expecting, I guess, that we're going to be swallowed up or something awful's going to happen. But in fact, there's a feather bed sitting there waiting for us at the bottom. We just don't know it and don't realize it at the time. And the more I throw myself into the abyss, into whatever, more good things seem to happen. And since we're talking about wild things, this is very fresh and not at all thought through. I had a very strange sleep pattern last night. I woke up at about 3 a.m. and then was awake until 4:30, but managed to go back to sleep and sleep again until nearly 9. So in total, I did well, but it was a little bit broken. But often when I wake up, it's some of my most creative times when I'm within what I call that twilight zone between asleep and awake. And the following words came into my head, which I wrote down. I'm just twisting with foxes. Foxes are dancing in my head.
That's awesome.
But, foxes are kind of what I wrote down at the time. Foxes are wily creatures. But it seems somehow linked to wild creativity as well. So, yeah, that's what I've got for you at the minute.
I think the fox is going to be, at least for today, the spirit animal of creativity.
Feels like it, doesn't it? There's some fox energy going on here.
Oh. Oh.
You know, the fox is really good at being, it's kind of known for being invisible, right? Like really hard to see until suddenly you see them. Like they're sort of mysterious in that way. Something occurred to me. If you're game for it, Tom, and you are as you're listening,
Sure.
I kind of want to do a little experiment. We can call it a wild creation experiment. We can call it that, whatever we want, but I'd love to just tune in and see what we feel for a moment. So if it's safe for you where you are to close your eyes, I'd love for you to do that. And just be present with your body, with your breath. Bring your attention to your skin and to the air on your skin and to the bottoms of your feet, maybe your little toes. And just notice whatever you notice in this. Notice what's alive in you. Notice aliveness. It might be a part of your body. It might be running through your body. It might come in the form of a sensation or just an awareness. But notice that aliveness and follow it for a bit. Just bring your attention there. What do you notice about it? What do you notice about aliveness and creation? And as you notice this aliveness, as you feel it, notice, see if you can notice, you might notice a movement to it. Aliveness has an energy. What is the movement like for you right now? And do you notice it inspiring you? Not in a big fancy way, but in a way of like the embers being sparked. And that aliveness can spark us as simply as, oh, scratch your ear. And when, in whatever way feels good, just notice that aliveness. Be with that aliveness. Notice that it's there. And as you're ready, I'd love for you to open your eyes and I'd love to hear what you noticed. That might be a little new and different. I see a yawn. Sometimes the aliveness is like time for a nap, right? Like, who says a nap isn't alive?
Hmm.
You know, I'd love for you to put up your digital hands and say, "Oh, we've got." Let's talk to Joe first, and then Mikhail. Hi, Joe.
Hi. I did drift off there. I have to confess I did. Just very briefly. So I was very pleased when you made that comment about falling asleep, because I could just give myself permission. I don't have to wait for your permission. I can give it to myself. Thank you.
You're welcome. I remember hearing Mavis Karn, who's a teacher in the Three Principles, a very beloved one, say that she was checking in with people as she was talking, and she said, "How are you feeling?" She said, "Maybe you feel a little sleepy. Who's yawning?" And people, like a bunch of people, raised their hands, and she said, "Yeah, I used to think that was because I was putting people to sleep. I was so boring." She said, "But actually, when we start to get a little more present and our body's tired, we kind of notice it. We get to relax. You know, we start to relax, and then suddenly we feel like, I gotta go to sleep right now." I don't know that that's what it is, but it might be.
Hmm.
So, Michaela, what are you noticing?
At first. So I sprained my little toe a couple of days ago. And so I had to laugh because it's like, what are the chances of someone inviting me to pay attention to my little toes now? That was very interesting. And then I just followed that because I've seen that my little toe has been very alive. And I have been very alive to it, protecting it, being careful of it. You know, sometimes, like focusing in so much and making the pain alive. And then noticing when, oh, I kind of forgot about it. And I've just been running up the stairs and not really noticing it. And then all of a sudden noticing. So just noticing how the sense of aliveness is so, wow. Yeah. I can come alive about anything, anywhere if I want to. So yeah, there was a whole bunch in there around what do I want to become more alive to?
Nice.
Yeah. Thanks.
Beautiful. Karina. Hi, Karina.
Hi, lovely to see you again. It's been a while. Yeah, so for me, it's almost like it's like I could just see like neon pink, like a highlighter, just over a bland piece, maybe even blank piece of paper when I'm following the aliveness. It's bright, it's vivid, um, and I've had that experience over the past few days where the background has been like, feelings of heaviness and kind of like a bit of that, and yet those moments of aliveness have just been like that neon pink highlighter, and everything comes to life. And I found myself last night having a first go at creating a logo, and so this aliveness just moves me to action. There's momentum. It's like everything else fades into the background and it's just there. So yeah, and I felt that again just during that exercise too. It's this sort of invincibleness feeling where it's just, this is happening. It's very, I guess, in the moment, nothing else. Like you mentioned that word interference. I love that. Yeah, no interference. It's just very focused, but in a inspired way, as opposed to a have to kind of way. Yeah.
Mm.
My experience.
That's beautiful, Karina. I like the vividness of your description in the pink. Hi, Ian. What did you notice?
A few things. One was just a sense of energy, particularly in my hands, but also my feet. But just like feeling vibrations, like that sort of level of energy. And then thinking about aliveness. I don't know if I'm agreeing with you, disagreeing with you, or just bringing up the same point. But, if we fall asleep, if we're here, if we're in a coma, if we're anywhere doing anything, I think all of that is alive and no less valid, and often a source of such rich material that there's nothing more alive than dreams sometimes. And then I was reminded of another dream from last night. It was a full-on night, and I was in a building, let's just say, with a whole group of people, and there was an elderly woman there who seemed to be strong and fit and well, but suddenly she took a turn for the worst and became unwell, and people look to me because I'm a doctor, and it's like, oh, Ian, you better check her out. And I wasn't desperately keen on doing this, but needs must. And in essence, I just sort of held her hand and instinctively took her pulse. And I can remember her heart beating very strongly, and she was definitely alive, but the heartbeat was irregular. Strong but irregular. And I did wonder if she was going to die in my arms, but she didn't. And she said to me, but it was an unusual sentence, but she said, clarity is behind everything. Which one could spend a lot of time processing, but those were her words, very clear. And but yeah, you see, remembering that I'm there, I'm back in that dream, I'm back in that space. It is alive right here with me now. Which I always find fascinating. And dreams, big dreams from years ago, are more real than what I had for my dinner an hour ago, Yeah.
Nice.
As you were speaking, Ian, it occurred to me that aliveness is not so much a state of being as like a way I can show up with whatever's there, like a meeting of it. It's full-on engagement. It's like, yes, it's not about this energetic state is alive, and then if I'm really feeling sluggish, it's not. It's like being a being withness that allows it to be the full expression of what it is. I'm wondering, I've not thought about it that way before.
As you say that, that's beautiful, because one of the things I've been seeing in recent weeks is just that, of becoming more alive. However one interprets that, whatever that means, of being more alive, not just dead to the world, not dead to my surroundings, not continuing a somewhat at times, one could say, monotonous existence. I have enjoyed going off on new adventures, doing things I've never done before. And in doing so, I'm more alive than I've ever been. And it's linked to the fox somehow. I don't quite know how, but it is about foxes aren't seen. It's something about being seen more in the world, you know, being putting it out there a bit. So no. And as we're talking, you see, this is becoming more alive. There's something being birthed out of this process.
Mm.
That's why I love groups. Things bounce around. And
Yeah, and I think that's the intention behind my asking you to find aliveness, because like it's for me, it is something that we can feel and like follow. And it's not that the state of rest isn't alive, it is. Like that is too. It all is. And like just bringing our attention to the aliveness that's already here brings us alive more, brings our lives alive more, living from aliveness more, and noticing when it doesn't feel so alive.
Mm-hmm.
And then just you can bring your attention back. It's like it could be alive with anger.
Yeah.
Or alive with sadness. Alive with any experience, but alive in it, alive to it, awake in it. Mm.
Yeah.
And the African word Ubuntu comes to mind. I am because we are, or I am because you are. And again, there's a tremendous sense of aliveness in that for me.
Beautiful. Thanks, Ian.
Yeah.
I'm curious what you might have noticed, Tom.
Yeah.
Aliveness there.
Well, I love that question because aliveness, the way I experience that, is always available. And the one thing that I'm often like to orient myself towards simplicity, it's like, well, what's always available? And that is one thing that's always available. So even in the midst of what we would call bad feelings, depression, worry, if I take even just like 2 seconds to look, that is alive too. Like even this morning, actually, I was feeling this kind of heavy, depressed feeling, which I've known a lot in my life. I'm sure everyone's has that experience from time to time, and it's just energy. Like even the heaviness, like if I were to describe that feeling of being depressed, it's kind of like heavy. But the heaviness is alive too. The heaviness is vibrating to some extent. And I really feel that what happens, which is so amazing, is, and this is with any feeling. So I'll just pick depression because it's one that I've been very, very familiar with, is that the thing that makes it feel so bad is the idea that it shouldn't be happening, or that it means something bigger about my life outside of this moment. But when I'm just feeling the heaviness and the aliveness, like that thought cannot sustain itself in the midst of aliveness. It just can't. It has to like just poof, go away. It may come and go, but it just cannot sustain itself. So to me, I think it's really awesome to, when it occurs, and that's our wisdom telling us, oh, Tom, just, okay, you're feeling however you're feeling. Could be good or bad. Is it alive? Is it alive? Is there aliveness here? And the answer is always yes. And it always is alive. And the idea that it's wrong or bad, it just can't sustain itself, which is awesome, which is like the best news ever. So I think we have Karina, did you?
Yeah, I don't know if Danagita had her hand up first, or it doesn't matter. I'll just very quickly, just on what you were saying. I love that, Tom, so much. I live in Oxford, as you know, and a non-dual teacher that I really respect, Rupert Spiro, lives here and has started doing in-person meetings, and I went with my partner on Friday, and I love the distinction that he made, which just made me think there's always aliveness. It's like where the awareness of who we are at our core, our true nature, there's always aliveness. Whatever's weather's flowing through, which he describes as like the content of our experience, and when we're identified with that, we kind of perhaps get lost in it, and if they're heavy feelings, that sense of aliveness perhaps goes. Like I was just feeling, I think, sort of hormonal changes and all that. I've been feeling quite low and heavy over the past few days, no reason. And yet I have had moments of real aliveness too. It's like and or, isn't it? It's because there's that background, that the blank page, that's the aliveness, and there's just whatever words or whatever drawings on top of it. You know, it's always there at the foundation. It's just good to remember that. So yeah, I loved what you said there. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. That was so alive for me. And Danagita.
Well, I mean, in wrapping, like what you said, this, I just felt again this kind of bowl with embers. And when you said, Tom, about the heaviness, I just allow myself to fall into that fire that is not there. And amazing is that when I sort of allow that heaviness to fall into the fire, it starts burning. So it means like my heaviness, and I tend to have depressions these days a lot, and mind chat and self-pity and self-judgment. So if I let that drop into that kind of down, I see that fire starting to kind of burn. So you know how they say sometimes burn your shit and so that it may become the rocket to push you up. So this kind of feeling I had when you said that before, Tom. So that's my little nodules.
I notice how alive the descriptions are that people are speaking and sharing, how they come alive, sharing them, how you light up as you see something just for you, something beautiful about aliveness, or what you can let go of, what you can put your attention on, and what creation is happening through you right now. It's gorgeous. And we do need to end right on time. Ian, can you be very brief and you can take us home?
Very brief.
Okay.
So I been riding quite a wave of good feelings for a few weeks, and last week there was some nonsense going on with builders and so on, but I realized that life cannot all be fluffy bunnies and rainbows and unicorns, and that if we just lived in that place all the time, it'd just be no variation. There would be no aliveness. And that was the kind of comment I put in the comment section. I think it is the highs and the lows and the ups and the downs that tell us we are human. And that is the human experience. And for that, I'm grateful.
Thank you, Ian. Thank you, everyone, for coming and sharing and being with us. And we shall see you again very soon. We'll have our Love in Action call the 4th Tuesday. I'm checking with Tom as I say it, like, did the words come out properly?
Perfect.
And until then, sending my love. Have a beautiful day.
Yeah.